নমস্কার। আজকের লিডারশিপ এবং পার্সোনালিটি ডেভেলপমেন্ট কন্টেস্টের থার্ড এপিসোড। এই থার্ড এপিসোডে আমরা যে টপিকটা রেখেছিলাম সেটা হচ্ছে ইউথ্যানাসিয়া, অর্থাৎ ইচ্ছা মৃত্যু। এটাকে লিগালাইজ করা যাবে কি না, এর পক্ষে এবং বিপক্ষে আমাদের এখান থেকে যারা সিলেক্টেড হয়েছেন, আজকে তাদের মধ্যে 4-5 জন যারা সিলেক্টেড হয়েছেন তারা উপস্থিত আছেন স্ক্রিনে। আরও 2-1 জন পরে জয়েন করে যাবেন, হয়তো নেটের কানেক্টিভিটি বা কোনো কারণে এখনো জয়েন করেননি। তো আমরা একে একে কন্টেস্ট্যান্টকে ডেকে নেব এবং তারা তাদের বক্তব্য রাখবেন এই ইচ্ছা মৃত্যু বিষয়ে। এইটা করা হচ্ছে যে আমাদের 1 জুলাই যে ডক্টরস ডে ছিল সেটাকে মাথায় রেখেই এই ইচ্ছা মৃত্যুকে লিগালাইজ করা যাবে কি না এই কন্টেস্টটা করা হচ্ছে। এনিওয়ে, তো আজকে আমি প্রথম কন্টেস্ট্যান্টকে ডেকে নেব, আভা চ্যাটার্জি। আভা, তোমার প্রত্যেককে 10 মিনিট করে সময় দেওয়া হবে। সেই 10 মিনিটের মধ্যে সে তার বক্তব্য পেশ করবে। আমি জেনে নেব তার আগে যে আভা তার পক্ষে বলবেন না বিপক্ষে বলবেন।
গুড আফটারনুন স্যার, আমি আভা চ্যাটার্জি, আমি WBCS মেডিজি স্টুডেন্ট। স্যার, আমি আজকে ইউথেনেশিয়ার ফেভারে বলবো, মানে পক্ষে বলবো, ফর দ্য মোশন।
ওকে, তোমার ক্যামেরাটা যদি একটু অ্যাডজাস্ট করে নাও, মাথাটা কেটে যাচ্ছে।
স্যার এবার কি
ফাইন, হ্যাঁ ঠিক আছে। তাহলে ইওর টাইম স্টার্টস নাও।
ওকে। We don't let animals suffer. So why humans? In the above quotation of Sir Stephen Hawking, where he emphasized on the immense suffering of human through any deadly disease, the answer of euthanasia has its answer. The euthanasia, it is a simple word and has its long journey through the Greek words eu, meaning good, and thanatos, meaning death. The idea of euthanasia is that instead of condemning someone to an undignified death, euthanasia allows the patient to die respectfully. In my opinion, I would like to draw your attention towards the immediate need for legalization of euthanasia in India. The opinion that euthanasia is morally permissible has been a long history from the time of Socrates and Plato. In 1973, a junior nurse of Sir Edward Memorial Hospital, Mumbai, was sexually assaulted by a ward boy. The nurse remained in the vegetative state for 37 long years. She was admitted to the intense critical care unit with just a ventilator support. This is the case of Aruna Shahanbag, which paved the first euthanasia case in the land of India. On 9th March 2018, the Supreme Court of India passed a historic judgment through a law permitting passive euthanasia in India. Before judging about the legalization of euthanasia, we all should read the book written by Pinky Virani, A Book on Nurse Plight. I know about many of my friends, those who are against the law for euthanasia. According to them, there are alternatives to euthanasia that are effective pain relief or the active treatment. Then why to choose the path of euthanasia? Not all deaths are painful. In this regard, I would like to draw their attention with due respect that we are living in the 21st century, and as all of us have the right to self-determination, then why not the right, and then why we don't have the right for ourselves to die in a dignified manner? A person suffering from an incurable disease or living in this state of coma for a longer period of time should be given this much of pleasure to die according to his or her own wish. Euthanasia does not mean suicide. Suicide is unlawful. Here the person attempts to end up all mental sufferings, but euthanasia is done to end the pain of a terminally ill patient. Euthanasia also relieves the caretaker's burden. According to me, people who have incurable, degenerative, and disabling condition should be allowed to die in dignity. For this type of patient, caregivers' burden is huge and it affects them not only physically and mentally, but also emotionally and financially. Right to refuse medical treatment is well recognized in our constitution, including medical treatment that sustains or prolongs life. For example, when a patient of blood cancer refuses to take his treatment or deny it through that nasogastric tube, here the decision of the patient need to be respected. And the right to refuse treatment gives away to that patient the passive euthanasia. Euthanasia for terminally ill patient provide an opportunity to advocate for the organ donation. This will turn in to help the patients with organ failure waiting for the transplantation. Thus, euthanasia does not only mean right to die, it also the right to life for the organ needy patients. Previously, Stephen Hawking, in his early life, made a remark about assisted suicide, the other name of euthanasia, to be a great mistake. But as his sufferings from the motor neuron disease increases, in an interview he stated that a patient should allowed to be die and the doctors who will help them should be free from prosecution. Hawkins had been held as the supreme example of human being who has triumphed over all the failing body to achieve a scientific and literary success. But this is not the case of everyone. In the number of protesters against euthanasia, some of the religion groups also play a very crucial role. In Christianity, they believe that God has only the right to create us and God is the only one to take our lives. Some of the Buddhists and Hindus also agree with this law. But some of the Hindus say that by helping to end a painful life, a person is performing a good deed and so by fulfilling their moral obligation. In 2002, Netherlands became the first country to legalize euthanasia, followed by Belgium and Luxembourg. If the Western world adopting measures and stating that euthanasia are not punishable offense, if it is attending by the physician, then why the Indian society could not adopt such practices and allow to die according to one's wish? Switzerland has already legalized a suicide machine called Sacro that allow users to kill themselves relatively in a painless manner by hypoxia or hypocapnia. At last, I would like to end up with some of the arguments in favor of legalization for euthanasia. First, autonomy, respect, peace, and comfort. These are the right of each individual. Physician responsibility for eliminating suffering and promoting dignified end of life. The critical illness, which cannot be controlled by medical management, need to be cured through euthanasia. We all should have the right to live. Then why we cannot shout for right to death? Thank you.
থ্যাংক ইউ আভা, খুব সুন্দর তুমি বলেছো। তুমি মোটামুটি সবকটা অ্যাসপেক্টই ছুঁয়ে দিয়েছো এবং তোমার বক্তব্যের পক্ষে খুব জোরালো একটা সওয়াল করেছো। তো এরপরেই আমি ডেকে নেব অম্লান মাঝিকে। অম্লান, তুমি পক্ষে না বিপক্ষে, কোন দিকে বলবে যে ইউথ্যানাসিয়াকে লিগ্যালাইজ করা যাবে কি যাবে না? ইচ্ছামিত্রকে।
হ্যাঁ, লিগ্যালাইজ করার পক্ষে।
ঠিক আছে, 10 মিনিট সময়, 9 মিনিটের মাথায় আমরা একটা ওয়ার্নিং দেব। তোমার টাইম স্টার্ট হচ্ছে এখন।
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today I would like to explain about euthanasia. Should it be legalized in India or not? There is a word in Sanskrit which is called Ichhamrityu. That means self-willed death. In one word, we can say this: euthanasia. We can pick any religion, in any religion, or we can in of God or the avatar of God. There is one thing is common, that is euthanasia. The death of them is they attended the death by euthanasia, that is self-willed death. So we can say there is nothing about sentiment that hurting euthanasia, hurting religious sentiments. So now let's talk about medical aspects of euthanasia. Euthanasia is the practice of ending life, uh, in ending life uh, from the patient from suffering. The patient in question would typically be terminally ill or experiencing great pain and suffering. The word euthanasia itself comes from Greek word eu and thanatos. That eu means good and thanatos means death. There are four types of euthanasia. Number one, active euthanasia, the direct administration of lethal substance to the patient by another party with good intentions. Presently, this euthanasia is legalized in Belgium, Luxembourg, Canada, and Netherlands. Second, passive euthanasia, withholding or withdrawing of life-sustaining treatment, um, either in the request of a patient or the physician. This kind of euthanasia is euthanasia is presently legalized in India, Netherlands, Canada, and Belgium. Third, in indirect euthanasia. Euthanasia refers to the prescription of painkillers that may be fatal in attempt to relieve the suffering. And fourth and last, the physician-assisted euthanasia. Suicide refers to medical professional aiding a patient terminating their life upon patient's request. Now we
নেটটা বোধহয় ডিস্টার্ব করছে,
sir,
বলো।
একটু ডিস্টার্ব করছে এখানে। Now we will talk about this further in Indian aspect. On November 27, 1973, Aruna Schonberg, a nurse in Mumbai, and attacked by Sohanlal Varta Valmiki, and the incident caused permanent damage to her brain and laid her into a permanent vegetative state. In other words, in coma. After 42 years later, activist journalist Pinky Bhirani filed a petition for passive euthanasia that will help her absolve from her pain and agony. Finally, 7th of March 2011, Supreme Court granted the permission to perform passive euthanasia on her. Now, as we can see, the Supreme Court has already legalized passive euthanasia once. Uh, so we will discuss further why we should support and legalizing euthanasia in India. Number one, we will discuss this through some points. Number one, right to die. Many patients in a persistent vegetative state or else in chronic illness do not want to be burdened on their family members. Euthanasia can be considered as a way to uphold the right to life by honoring the right to die with dignity. Second, encouraging the organ transplantation. Euthanasia is in terminally ill patients provides an opportunity to advocate for organ donation. This in turn will help many patients with organ failure waiting for transplantation. Third, caregivers burden. People who have incurable degenerative, disabling, and debilitating conditions should be allowed to die in dignity. Who have chronic debilitating illness, majority of such petitions are, are filed by patient or the family members or the physicians. So the caregivers burden is huge across various domains such as technical, emotional, functional, time, physical, and mental. Fourth, refusing care. Right to refuse medical care and treatment is well recognized in law, including medical treatment that sustain or prolongs life. Recognition of right to refuse treatment gives a way for passive euthanasia. Many do argue that allowing medical treatment of pregnancy before 16 weeks is also a form of active euthanasia. This is the issue of mercy killing of deformed fetus. It is essential to understand that euthanasia is not a
ঠিক আছে, ইন্টারনেটটা ডিস্টার্ব করছে অনেকক্ষণ ধরেই। আমরা ওকে ওয়েটিং রুমে রাখছি। হ্যাঁ, এনিওয়ে, তো আমরা পরের কন্টেস্ট্যান্টকে ডেকে নেব, শ্রেয়া রুদ্র। ঠিক আছে, শ্রেয়া রুদ্র, তোমার সময় 10 মিনিট। তোমার সময় 10 মিনিট, তুমি স্টার্ট করবে। তুমি পক্ষে বলবে না বিপক্ষে বলবে? শ্রেয়া, শুনতে পারা যাচ্ছে? ঠিক আছে, আমরা নবেন্দুর কাছে চলে যাই। নবেন্দু, তুমি পক্ষে বলবে না বিপক্ষে বলবে?
Sir, I would like to express view against euthanasia.
Okay, your time starts now.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nabendu Roy, student of WBCS Medinipur College Street batch. Today, I would like to submit my opinion in contrary to the implementation of the euthanasia in India, in spite of euthanasia is practiced in several countries worldwide. At first, I would like to describe what is euthanasia in brief. The word euthanasia originated from Greece, which means a good death. Different types of euthanasia is practiced in society, such as active, passive, voluntary, involuntary, and physician assisted. So, what is active? Introducing something to cause death. What is passive? Withholding treatment or supportive measure. Voluntary means consent from the patient. Involuntary means consent from the guardian. Physician assisted. Physician prescribes the medicine and the patient or the third party, means the family members or the guardian, administers the medicine to cause death. Now coming to India. In India, abatement of suicide and attempt to suicide both are criminal offense. Also IPC 309, which is related to this, is declared unconstitutional under Article 21 by Supreme Court in 1994. Again, in 1996, IPC 306 came into picture related to right to die. So to discuss this complex euthanasia topic, I would like to share my opinion from different viewpoints of human rights, constitutional, health, ethical, social, economical, and religious aspects of civilized society. Now, if I discuss from the point of view of social care, earlier disease outcome was discussed in terms of cure, but in the contemporary world of diseases like severe corona, cancer, AIDS, diabetes, hypertension, and mental illness are debated in terms of care because cure is distant. The expectation of society is cure from the health professionals, but the role of the medical professional is to provide care. Hence, euthanasia for no cure illness does not have a logical argument. At times, doctor do suggest to the family members to have the patient discharged from the hospital, waiting for death to come, if the family or patient so desires. This happens due to various reasons like poverty, non-availability of bed, futile intervention, even resources can be utilized for the other patients where cure is possible. To motive the motive for many euthanasia intervention patients where like cure is not possible, they think that patients often hear from the doctor like nothing can be done anymore. However, when patients have an opportunity that lot can be done through palliative care, through which symptoms can be controlled. Now the word palliative care came into picture, so I would like to discuss from the viewpoint of human rights. The right to death with dignity is like eliminating someone who is invalid ones, like disposing the people with incurable and debilitating illness from our civilized society. The practice of palliative care is an active, compassionate, creative care for the dying by euthanasia. The Indian Association of Palliative Care is one of them. If I discuss from the economic point of view, passive euthanasia occurs in majority of the hospitals across the country because poor patients or family members refuse or withdraw treatments because of the huge cost in keeping the patient alive. If euthanasia is legalized, some dishonest health sectors will serve death sentence to many disabled and elderly citizens of India for meager amount of money. Now, if I discuss from the point of view of Constitution of India, right to life as per Article 21 is incompatible and inconsistent with the concept of unnatural termination or extinction of life. It is a duty of the state also, not only the country, to protect. Sorry, sorry. To it is the duty of the state also, not only the country, to protect the life, and the physician's duty is to provide care and no harm to the patients. If euthanasia is legalized, there is a grave apprehension that the state may refuse to invest in health, and the quality of care for terminally ill patients by the doctor will be declined. If we consider from the viewpoint of mental health, attempt to suicide is considered as a sign of mental illness by the guidelines for suicidal patients in psychiatry, and it is recommended to provide them immediate help or assistance. Hence, it is essential to assess the mental status of the patient suffering from depression, schizophrenia, or substance users, because they commonly seek for euthanasia. Now, from the ethical perspective, in the era of declining morality and injustice, there is a possibility of misusing euthanasia by family members or relatives for inheriting the property of the patient. The Supreme Court advised that mercy killing should not be lead to killing mercy. Hence, to keep control over the medical professionals, the Indian Medical Council Regulation 2002 discussed euthanasia briefly in Chapter 6, Section 6.6, along with the Transplant Human Organ Act 1994. Law Commission has also submitted a report also. The report number is maybe 196 to government regarding urgent need to protect the patients and medical practitioners caring terminally ill patients from the unnecessary lawsuit. India is a secular country. There are a lot of religions here and lot of concepts and viewpoints is related to that religions. So, but most of the religions, they are against the euthanasia. They think that the will of God, as per different religions, is the only thing that can be defined to the God can only define the death. But even though Jainism is allowed in Jainism, that euthanasia is allowed, but most of the religions don't allow. They think the God will say when there will be death. Like in Bengali, there is a saying, "Jonmo mrityu bibaho tin bidhara niye." So like that. So as per religious perspective, euthanasia is not accepted. They from their perspective, it is vulnerable because illness or disability, uh, those people who don't deserve ignorance or just killing or just eliminating them from society, they need special care or protection. As per the care of life is much better than this thing euthanasia. Supreme Court judgment to withhold a decision on this sensitive issue is the first step towards the new era of the healthcare of these terminally ill patients. Research has revealed that many terminally ill patients asking euthanasia have major depression, and that the desire for death in terminally ill patients is somehow related to the depression. They must be looked after by by the enthusiastic, compassionate, and humanistic team of health professionals and caring society. And the complete expense need to be borne by the state government so that the right to life become a reality, which will be succeeded before the right to death with dignity. That's all. Thank you, sir.
খুব ভালো বলেছো নবেন্দু, খুব সুন্দর এক্সপ্লেন করে দিয়েছো, থ্যাংক ইউ। তো এরপরে আমি নেক্সট কন্টেস্ট্যান্টকে ডেকে নেব, শ্রেয়া রুদ্র। তুমি পক্ষে বলবে না বিপক্ষে বলবে?
স্যার আমি এগেইনস্টে বলবো।
বলো, ইওর টাইম স্টার্টস নাও।
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and my respected teacher. Thank you for selecting me as a speaker today regarding this very sensitive issue. I will be against euthanasia today. I would like to start off by saying that I have named this discussion as euthanasia, the last right. Mercy or murder, virtue or sin, legal or illegal. Euthanasia has always been a matter of great debate all over the world. Should the right to life include the right to die? In many ways, this is an existential question. On January this year, Colombia saw its first legal non-terminal euthanasia case. What does that mean for us? What are the rules and regulations regarding euthanasia? What are the medical, judicial, and religious point of views on this matter? Let's discuss. But first, we need to understand what exactly is euthanasia. According to the Oxford Dictionary, euthanasia is the painless killing of a patient who is suffering from an incurable and painful disease derived from a Greek word euthanatos, which means good death. Okay, now let's come to the types of euthanasia. There are multiple ways of euthanasia or mercy killing. Let's discuss one by one. Voluntary. This kind of euthanization is done at the request of the patient. Non-voluntary. When the patient is not in a state to make a decision, so on behalf of the patient, someone else makes the decision. Involuntary. Patient wants to live but is killed anyways. This procedure is illegal in every country as this is basically murder. Active euthanasia. In this way, a person takes an action to cause a patient's death, like giving them a drug or injection. Passive euthanasia. In this way, death is brought about by withholding treatment or stopping the life support system of the patient. Assisted suicide. Patient is provided help in dying by someone. Physician assisted suicide. Doctor assists the patient in dying. Doctrine of double effect. Pain medicine is given which has side effects of speeding the patient's death. Now, let's see what's happening around the world. Currently, active euthanasia is illegal in almost every country. However, in some countries, passive euthanasia, assisted suicide, and physician assisted suicide are allowed. Netherlands became the first country to legalize euthanasia on 2002, followed by Belgium. Right now, Netherlands, Canada, Belgium, Colombia, Luxembourg, and India has recognized passive euthanasia. In Switzerland, euthanasia is illegal, but assisted suicide is allowed as long as there is no self-seeking motive of the assistant. They have also introduced a suicide machine named Sharko to provide relatively painless death. Physician-assisted suicide. It is legal in Netherlands, Luxembourg, and in some states of America. Now, let's come to the history and development of euthanasia-related cases in India. State of Maharashtra versus Maruti Shripati Dubal case, 1986. In its verdict, the Bombay High Court held that the right to life under Article 21 includes the right to die. However, in Gyan Kaur versus the State of Punjab case, a 5-member bench overruled the previous verdict and held the right to life does not include the right to die or right to be killed. Now, the most important case regarding legalizing euthanasia happened in 2009 when journalist Pinky Virani filed a petition to the Supreme Court of India on behalf of Aruna Shanbag. We all know about Aruna Shanbag. Pinky Virani argued that the consistent existence of Aruna is in violation of her right to live with dignity. So, in the verdict of this case on 7th March 2011, the Supreme Court issued a broad guidelines legalizing passive euthanasia for comatose or PVS patients in India. Two of the major guidelines were, first of all, the decision has to be taken either by the parents or the spouse of the patient, and in absence of them, by a next friend. And this decision will require presence of 2 witnesses and countersigned by a first-class judicial magistrate and approved by a medical board set up by the hospital. However, in Aruna's case, Pinky Virani was not recognized as a next friend to Aruna, so her petition got rejected. Common Cause versus Union of India case. On May 1st, 2005, an NGO called Common Cause filed a case in Supreme Court seeking approval to execute a living will for terminally ill patients. With the help of this will, patient will be able to decide in advance to refuse life support system in case of a comatose situation. On 9th March 2018, the Supreme Court of India held that a person can execute a living will to refuse medical treatment in case of terminal illness, making the right to die with dignity a fundamental right. There have been numerous heated debates regarding legalizing euthanasia. It's a debate that divides the public opinion and the medical community sharply down the middle. Even though I do not totally disagree with the concept of euthanasia, today I will talk against it because I think this is a matter that varies from case to case. I will try to represent my arguments in different perspectives. Let's start with the legal perspectives on euthanasia. According to the Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, people have the right to life and personal liberty. And hence, people often confuse it with the right to die with dignity. However, in the Gyan Kaur case, the Punjab High Court clearly stated that right to die or right to be killed is explicitly not included in the Article 21. Also, in the case of Cheena Jagadishwar versus State of Andhra Pradesh, the Andhra High Court held that the right to die is not a fundamental right. So, legalizing euthanasia and allowing making a living will would contravene these verdicts. According to the libertarian case, death is a private subject, and if there is no harm done to others, then the state and other people have no right to interfere. But then, in contrary to this, according to section 309 and 306, means attempt of suicide and abetment of suicide are criminal offences. So, if suicide is not allowed, then how come euthanasia and living wills are accepted? These should also not be allowed. In this regard, I personally believe in the opinion of Mr. Soli Sorabji, former Attorney General of India. He said in an NDTV television program on 7th October 2012 that euthanasia is not a social, religious, or legal issue. It's an autonomy of the patient. If the patient is suffering unbearable pain for a long period of time and for which the present state of medical knowledge has no possible cure, when the person is literally living on machine and has no dignity, no privacy, then the doctors can consent on euthanization and submit the reports to the court. And after a proper investigation, they can go on and withhold the life support system. I think all other forms of euthanasia should be recognized as criminal offenses. Okay, now let's find out what are the medical perspectives on euthanasia. Euthanization of terminal...
1 minute left.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. We have seen a lot of cases where people have come out of coma after years, like Gina Gizi, who survived rabies for the first time in the world after being on an experimental coma for 2 weeks 17 years ago. And we can also talk about some ethical and moral perspectives. In advanced medical science, it's all about treating patients and saving lives and giving hopes. So medical ethics says it will be morally wrong to end a life. Now let's see some of the social dilemmas. I think vulnerable patients like the underprivileged ones and the one who have disabilities are more prone to this kind of situation. Like Jeet Narayan, whose 4 sons were diagnosed with muscular dystrophy, wrote to the President of India seeking euthanization permission for his whole family, claimed he couldn't take care of or afford to take care of his sons anymore. It was a case of total failure of the state who couldn't provide the proper public healthcare system that actually works. In Jainism and Hinduism, there is Salikhana and Moksha, both of which means fast unto death. But then there is Christianity and Islam, both of which tells us that God has created life, so he should be the only one who can take it. Former US President Barack Obama... Okay, sir. So ultimately, keeping in mind all these contradictory factors, we can say that the issue is vast and we do not have a particular answer yet. So I would like to end it with the, as Alfred Tennyson says in the poem named The Two Voices, whatever crazy sorrow says, no life that breathes with human breath has ever truly longed for death. Thank you.
Thank you, Shreya Rudra, খুব ভালো বলেছো, অনেক ইনফরমেশন, অনেক সাপোর্টিং তুমি তোমার দলিল রেখেছো। এনিওয়ে, তো আজকে আরো দুজন কন্টেস্টেন্ট আছেন, কিন্তু তাদের ইন্টারনেট বা টেকনিক্যাল ইস্যুর জন্য আমি নিতে পারছি না, এখানে তাদের ছবি দেখা যাচ্ছে না। তো আজকের যে কন্টেস্টটা হলো তার রেজাল্ট আমরা কালকে সকালের মধ্যেই এই জায়গাতেই কমেন্ট বক্সে দিয়ে দেবো, এবং পরবর্তীকালে পরবর্তী বুধবারও আমাদের আরেকটি কন্টেস্ট রয়েছে ওয়ার্ল্ড পপুলেশন ডে এর উপরে, সেটা হবে এক্সটেম্পো ফরম্যাটে। এটা যেমন ডিবেট ছিল, তেমনি এক্সটেম্পোর অর্থাৎ যে ওয়ার্ল্ড পপুলেশন ডের উপর তৈরি করে আসতে হবে এবং সেটাকে সের মধ্যে থেকে যে টপিকটা আমরা দেব সেই টপিকটাকে নিয়ে আলোচনা করতে হবে। সে 3 মিনিট 5 মিনিট যেটাই আমরা ঠিক করব সেটা। তার জন্য যে কন্টেস্টের ফর্মটা আছে সেটাও আমি একটু পরে কমেন্ট বক্সে দিয়ে দিচ্ছি, সেটা যে কেউ অ্যাটেন্ড করতে পারে, ওপেন টু অল। এই বলে আমাদের আজকের বক্তব্য, আমাদের আজকের প্রোগ্রাম শেষ করছি। তোমাদের সকলকে ধন্যবাদ। আমরা রেজাল্টটা কালকে সকালের মধ্যে দিয়ে দেবো। থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ। গুড নাইট।
Thank you, sir.